Peachtree Case Study B by John DeFuria. The nominal expected rate is the stock's par value multiplied by the cumulative dividend and then divided by the current share price. Calculations show that the nominal expected rate will come out to 9%. The effective annual rate of return takes into consideration that dividends are compounded on a quarterly basis, and the calculations come out to 9.308%. Part B, to find the current value of per share price, you need to find the present value of the future cash flows. With the 9.75% cumulative dividend, you then multiply the 9.75 times 100 to get $9.75 per share. To get the dividend or the interest payment, multiply the number of shares outstanding by the 9.75 and 60,000 times par to get the share payment at par. You then total those two columns. You then discount the future cash flows at 8% and total those up to get the present value of the future cash flows. Finally, you divide the present value of the cash flows by the number of the shares outstanding, and the calculation of the current value per share works out to $104.41. Question 2, Part A and B. TECO's 5-year growth rate is 6%, and the stock is trading at $22.26, and now you assume that there's a 6% growth rate. What is TECO's expected rate of return at the beginning of 1992? You take D sub 0, which is $1.80, multiplied by 1.06, the growth rate, gets you 1.908, and divide that by the current share price of $22.26, which gives you 8.5714%. The growth rate of 6% is then added to the expected dividend yield, which gives you a total expected return of 14.5714%. For Part B, what is the expected dividend yield and expected capital gains yield on January 1st, 1992? The expected dividend yield is calculated by the current dividend divided by the share price. $1.80 divided by the $22.26 gives you 8.0863%, and the 6% growth is added on as the capital gains yield. Question 2, Part C and D. What is the relationship between dividend yield and capital gains yield over time under constant growth assumptions? As listed here, the relationship between the two are related and remain the same over time. The dividend and stock price are growing at the same rate. Part D, what conclusions must hold to use the constant growth Gordon model? And do many real-world stocks satisfy the constant growth assumption? Answer to Part 1 is the constant growth model assumes that dividend yields are supposed to grow at a constant rate and not change over time. There is also assumption that a company's net income or earnings are also expected to grow at the same rate. The second part, there are not many stocks that satisfy the constant growth assumptions. Large mature companies are the closest ones that fall into this category, or ones that can use this model. It does not mean that they are currently at the same growth rate each year, but they are estimated to be held constant to the same estimates each year. Question 3, Part A through D. Suppose that TECO's 6% dividend growth rate will only hold 5 years. After that, the dividend growth rate will return to the 10-year average of 7.5%. What is the value of TECO stock on January 1st, 1992? After doing the calculations, it works out to $30.28. What is the expected price at the end of 1992 or beginning of 2003? The calculation worked out to $32.46. And then what is the expected price at the end of 1993 or beginning of 1994? Worked out to $34.82. In Part D, we're expecting the expected dividend yield. It works out to the 1.91 divided by 30.28 is out to 6.3%. The capital gains yield was used by using the holding periods return formula, and it works out to 7.2%. Add that up for a total return, you get 13.5%. Now we're going to suppose that the dividend is expected to remain constant at $1.80 for the next 5 years and then grow at a constant 6% rate. The required rate of return is 13.5%. After doing the calculations, the stock price would be valued at $19.78. From Part A, Question 3, the answer to the stock's value price was $30.28. You would expect that the stock price would be lower in Part E due to the dividend not increasing over the first 5 years. This would cause the stock to have a lower value compared to one that is continuing to grow at a 6% growth rate over that 5-year period. The required rate of return stayed constant, so in calculating the present value of the future cash flows, the stock that had zero growth over a period of time, that price would be lower than the one that had a 6% growth. And on Part F, calculating that the stock price was at $22.26 at the beginning of 1992, using the above growth rate given in the introduction of this question, what is the stock's expected rate of return? And is calculated at a 5% growth from the average of the previous years, and then added it to the 8.6 to get 13.6%. This is expected due to the expected rate of return, or the K, being equal to 13.5%. This number is only 0.1% off of what was expected. Based on value lines tables, is assumed 6% growth rate reasonable? What has been the trend? Yes, the 6% growth rate is reasonable. Past 5 years it has grown at 6.5%, past 10 years at 7.5%. There has been a steady decline in the growth rate, but the trends show that the increase in companies' earnings, revenue, and cash flows can justify a 6% growth rate. Part H, the estimated figures and projected earnings and dividends per share. Could those figures be used to develop an estimated long-run sustainable growth rate? My answer is no. The average growth rate that worked out to calculate out to be 5.038%. This falls short of the estimated long-run growth rate of 7.5% over the 10 years, that they would take a more conservative approach and use an estimated 5 to 6% as the long-run growth potential. Thank you guys, and have a great day.